Hello, ambitious women, and welcome to Training Tuesday. So, tonight we're talking all about influence and the power of influence and what that means. And I think we're going to look at it from an angle that perhaps you haven't really considered it before. So, I want you to be thinking about the people who have the most influence in your life. And then I want you to pare that down. So, we're going to get a little bit specific around how and why certain people have influence over us, are able to influence and persuade us, what that looks like, what that feels like, and then kind of peel back the layers to say, okay, so what does this actually mean for me? What does this mean for who I am and how I show up as a leader, and for how I want to show up as a leader, for how I want to be and who I want to be going forward? So tonight is all about influence and leadership. And we're going to take away this aspect, which is a preconceived notion a lot of us have, that this is all about how much money you have or positional power, um, or just how persuasive and charming we are. And I'm not going to deny that all those things help. They help. But people with true influence don't rely on those things. Those are outcomes or those are tools that they use. But those aren't the reason why they are successful and influential and able to get the things done that they need to get done. So, when we're talking about influence and people who influence us, I think the first people who generally come to mind are our parents, right? We start thinking about our parents, and that makes complete sense because when we are born into this world, our parents truly are our only role model. They are the beacon for everything in the world until we get to a certain age, right? They are the ones who show us how to live. They are the ones who teach us how to think, how to speak, how to behave. And so our whole worldview is shaped by our parents. As we get older and we get exposed to more people and certainly more people in positions of influence, our view opens up a little bit, and that might put us in conflict with some of the things we learned from our family. It might not. But for tonight, I'm going to ask you to participate by thinking about who's been very influential for you. And I want to take our parents out of it. And whether it's your actual parents or a parental figure, I want to take that role model out of it. I want us to go beyond that because I want us to think about not the natural influencers in our lives, but the ones who actually had to earn that position, had to earn the place of being worthy of influencing us. And it is a position and a place that people earn. So parents or parental figures, right? Somebody who raised you or who lived in your household and was tight to that. I want you to put them out of your mind right now. And I want you to think about who was influential for you outside of that. So maybe as you were growing up, it was you played sports and it was a coach that you had. Maybe it was a friend or a friend's family, right? Whether it was an older sibling of theirs or one of their parents. Maybe if you were working a part-time job as a teenager, it was a boss that you had. As a young adult and as a working adult, and even today, right? Who influences you? Who are the coworkers or the bosses or the people in our friend group, right? In our sphere who actually inspire us and influence us. So I want you to bring at least one of those persons to mind. That's who I want you to be thinking about. And I would love for you to share also in the chat who that person is. You don't have to drop their name because in this group we might not know it, but what is the role they play for you? And they influenced your career or they influenced your personal life or your parenting skills, but they influenced you in some major way. So that's what I want us to start with, which is I want you thinking about who influenced you. And before I dive into my story and all of this, I'm going to say hello. I am Natalie Hahn. I am CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and I am very happy to have you here with us tonight. Tonight, where we talk about influence. So, as always, say hi in the chat, and I see you, Joyce. Hi, it's great to see you. Um, If you've not been here before, then welcome to Training Tuesday. We are here every Tuesday talking about a different training topic. We try to keep them short and fun and usable. We focus our training topics on leadership skills, on confidence building, on managing that gnarly thing we call work-life balance, which I think some of us still think is a unicorn and maybe doesn't quite exist, but it's something that we wrestle with all the time. So I'm happy to have you here tonight. Say hello in the chat, especially if you're new, say hello and tell us where you're from. And if you're here every Tuesday with me, thank you. I love you and appreciate you, and still say hi. So back to what I was talking about with influence, right? Who is somebody who influenced you in your career, in the development of your adult life, who's not a parent, not a family member, preferably not a family member? And I want you to think about that, because those are the people who earned it. So if you've been to any of my master classes, you've likely heard me talk about a woman named Susan. And Susan was a woman who had significant influence in my career and how I thought of myself as a leader. So I'm going to share this story really quickly. You hear it if you've attended one of my master classes. You've likely heard this story. But what was so powerful about Susan was that she was not in a position of what we call positional power. It wasn't like she had a lot of money. She didn't own the company, and she wasn't in positional power. And yet, she was the most influential person in that company. And the funny thing was, she wasn't even an employee of the company. She was a contractor. She was a consultant that they had hired to float around the company and to talk to different groups and talk to them about how they were managing their part of the business and what they were doing well or not well, and kind of help us get on course. We were a small company. We were trying something brand new to the market, like had never been done before, and she was brought in as a consultant. So she didn't even have a position in the company. So there was no positional power. And just so that we're all on the same page, positional power is literally when you hold power because of where you are in the hierarchy. So when you think about a hierarchical structure, right, you think we start with people who are working on a team and they report to a manager. That manager has positional power over the team. That manager reports to a director. The director has positional power over him or her. Who reports to a VP, who has positional power over the directors, who reports to a C-level, right? So you see, so positional power is about being in a hierarchical structure, and your position in that structure gives you some semblance of power. Here's what we know. Plenty of people who are in positional power actually aren't very good with influence. They are not particularly influential at getting things done, or at furthering a goal, or at even being persuasive. They simply hold a position. So what was fascinating to me about Susan was that she was one of the most influential people in this company where she had zero positional power because she wasn't even a part of the team. She was an outside consultant. And yet, she was probably the strongest leader in that whole bunch. What took Susan to a place where she became probably one of the most significant role models for me in my corporate career was sitting in a boardroom meeting. Board members were there. She was there. I was low on the totem pole. I was in, low level positional power. I was a manager of a team. And I will say up till this point, I was very authoritarian, dare I say it, in how I managed my team, which just means my assumption was if I had positional power, I was the leader and they had to do what I said. Okay, and I was young, but I believed in positional power. And so it would be very frustrating for me, and I wouldn't understand if I was asking my team or telling my team to do something and it didn't get done. But they have to. They're my team. They're supposed to do what I say, right? That was a lot of my logic. I'm going to say this was early in my career, mind you, but still. It's still not an uncommon thought process, and it makes sense when you're put in positional power. The team does what you say, but as I've said, we've all watched teams who don't respect their boss or don't believe in the boss's, guidance or mission, and so they play the more passive aggressive mutiny thing. They just don't do it, or they do it slowly, right? Fun stuff like that. So anyway, I'm in this board meeting with Susan. We were in a board meeting because this project we were working on was about to take a significant investment. And I'm watching this room full of men, high tech industry. I'm watching this room full of men on the board of directors and the C-level executives grill her about certain things about our team because she was the consultant coming in to help give them kind of the bird's eye view. And when they asked her a question, I don't remember what the question was. They asked her a question and she looked at them and she said, huh, I don't know. I need to think about that and I'll get back to you. And that response blew my mind. Blew me away. Blew me away because at that point in my career, I could not imagine not having the answer. I could not imagine being in a room full of people who were looking at me for all the answers and I didn't have it. Not only did she not have the answer, she felt no pressure to make something up, to suggest things she could look at, to suggest possible answers. She felt no need to apologize for not having the answer. She literally said, like it was the most fascinating question they could have ever asked her. She literally looked at them and said, I don't know. I have to think about that and I'll get back to you. She didn't say I have to research that. She didn't say I have to go talk to 25 members of a team before I figure that out. She simply said, I have to think about it and I'll get back to you. That was the moment she became the most important person in the room to me, because that was the moment in which I realized she could teach me a lot about being a leader. And at that point, it had nothing to do with gender. It was momentous and powerful to me because she was the only woman in the room and I was the only other woman in the room as part of our tech team. But more than that, she commanded that room because none of those men went, well, come on, Susan, at least give us a thought or at least share your opinion on this, or how come you don't know? None of them. They all respected her and they nodded and said, okay, get back to us. And the conversation moved on. And it was not the first time. It was the first time I noted it. It was not the only time I watched her answer a question with, I don't know. I have to think about it. Or even a maybe. And let me give it more thought. The fact that she could not know and still be a leader, not have to scramble for having all the answers, not have to defend why she didn't have the answers. Suddenly I was looking at her and going, what does that say about her leadership? That she cannot know and still be perceived as a leader and still be respected. Had a huge influence on how I started looking at how I was managing myself, how I was managing my teams, and what did I really need to know going forward? What did I really need to believe in? And Susan had some qualities of being an influential leader that now in hindsight, right, and as I've been looking at this and researching this, make total sense to me. So she's my example of somebody who was incredibly influential on my career. I still think about her a lot today. Obviously, I still talk about her a lot. Who was not a family member, who had huge influence. So I would love to hear yours. So I'd love for you guys to drop in the chat. Like I said, you don't have to mention names because if you drop in Susan or I said Susan, you wouldn't know. But I'd love to know who it was. So for me, it was a woman who was a consultant and kind of sort of a boss, but not really, who became my first true significant female leadership role model in my career. I would love to hear what yours are. So I would love for you guys to drop it in the chat. And I see you. I said hi to Joyce. Hey, Jackie, it's good to see you. I see that Jordana's here. Hello. For the rest of you who are joining us, please say hello. Please drop in just a description of who that mentor was or who that role model or influencer was, whether they swayed your career, whether they swayed how you approached a hobby, right? Or something else that you love to do, how they changed the way you looked at parenting or looked at relationships. But who are those adults who are not your parents that you allow in? And while you're thinking about that and hopefully dropping something in the chat to share that information, I want to talk about some of the characteristics of influential people. And here's the thing, they can influence us positively and negatively. Right? One of the ways that we are very responsive to, people influence us is when we get criticized. And women in particular are susceptible to criticism. Men, not as much. Men actually have filters. I've talked about that in another training, that they go through when there's criticism so that they actually don't respond to it or feel it nearly as much. but women do. And so one of the ways we can be negatively influenced is when somebody who we look up to or somebody who's in that position of power around us um, criticizes us. And so that's a negative influence to look out for. So, okay, what do we have here? Maria. Hello, Maria. First role model as a leader was a former boss. Excellent. Jackie, female coworkers. Yes. Negative and positive. And that's true. We do learn just as much. We do learn just as much. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about some of the qualities that they have. And so you guys can tell me if these are some of the things that attracted you, I guess, to this person, for this person that you're thinking of to be an influential leader, right? So first and foremost, am I even interested in hearing more from this person? Like, do I want to hear what they have to say, right? Because when Susan said those words of, I don't know, I have to think about it, that was the first time I really keyed in on her and said, oh, I want to hear more. I want to hear more about what she doesn't know and why she's okay saying that. So one is, am I interested in what they have to say? Do I want to hear more from them? Yes. Another quality that we key into is, do we believe in them? Do we believe in what they represent? Do we want to follow them? Susan was somebody I definitely was motivated to follow and I believed in, because here she was, a successful independent contractor. She was running her own business and she was being brought in and looked at as a leader by a group of basically random stranger men who brought her in. Would I do something differently? Right? Another question. Would I do something differently after hearing this person speak, after hearing their opinion or what they have to say? For Susan, 1,000% yes, because the minute I could see that she was comfortable acknowledging what she didn't know, I was all in. I was like, yeah, there is a way to lead and not feel like I constantly have to prove myself. I constantly have to show that I'm the smartest person in the room, because been there, done that. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to constantly feel like you have to have all the answers all the time. And we do. And what I learned from Susan is we put that pressure on ourselves most of the time. When this person speaks, do I feel differently? Right? How do they impact me emotionally? Is there a connection there? So those are often some of the attributes that we're looking at, that we're responding to when somebody comes into our orbit and they become a position of influence, right? Is we want to hear more from them. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear what their position is or what their opinion is on this. I want to follow what they're doing, right? I want to hear what's going on, and then I want to figure out how I can work that and make that my own. And this person, when I'm listening to them, makes me feel how. The funny thing with Susan was it wasn't that she was especially persuasive or a charming speaker or any of that stuff. But when she spoke, I felt empowered. And she wasn't even talking to me or trying to empower me. But it was the way that she carried herself. It was what she believed in to her core about herself and about leadership that made me feel like I could have some of that too. It empowered me to feel like I could make changes to how I was showing up as a leader, to how I was looking at my career. And I could be something different and better and bigger. And I had no idea that that even existed until I met her. So there was certainly a sense of awe, but there was also a sense of gratitude. And there was also suddenly a sense of confidence that I got from her, that she didn't even necessarily intend to instill to me, because she was simply interacting and doing her job. So Jackie, people that know how to build relationships, those are the people I admire a ton, because you gain trust much faster. Exactly. You gain trust much faster when you have a good relationship with someone, which means working together becomes easier, right? It becomes faster. So let's talk about some of the key traits of influential leaders. Now, I wanted to take off the table, right, this preconceived notion that we have that to be an influential leader, you have to have money and you have to already have some sort of positional power. Susan didn't have positional power, and her money made no difference. I don't know how much she had or didn't have, But it made no difference to where she was in this career and the arc she was on. She didn't have positional power because she wasn't in a position of authority. She couldn't actually tell any of us what to do. And she couldn't actually force us to go down a certain path. She was literally an advisor, a consultant. So, some qualities of influential leaders. And I want you to now not only think about the person who's influenced you in your career, I want you to think about yourself as a leader. And because you don't have to have positional power, you don't have to have a team of people reporting to you. You don't have to have even a single person reporting to you. You don't have to be high on the totem pole. You don't have to have groupies or even major projects or anything like that that you're trying to manage. Because to be a person of influence means that you're talking to people. That's really all it is. When we influence people, we're communicating with them. But there are qualities around that communication that create influence. Okay? So one of them is taking the lead, right? Your first quality of truly being influential is, do you take the lead? And by taking the lead, I mean they include themselves as part of the conversation. So when you were talking on a subject, right? This person that's of influence, when they're talking on their subject, how are they speaking about it? They're owning it. It's part of their experience too. So they're using a lot of words like we and I and you and our, right? They're making it personal because through their taking the lead on owning the story, they're also building connection. So they're using words that are inclusive. They're using language that's inclusive. They use language that's emotional. They don't shy away from the emotional side of this, because when we're leading on any theme, any topic, any idea, there's a piece of us that's part of that. And so we take the lead by sharing ourselves in that piece. And at the same time, they lead by holding their boundaries, which means, yeah, I'm going to talk about we and I and us and this project, but I'm also going to draw a line where it's not okay. I'm going to draw a line where you don't talk to me with that tone, with that voice, with those words. Leaders do hold their boundaries. People of influence have boundaries. And that's part of what we admire about them. Like, not only was Susan comfortable saying she didn't know and she'd get back to you later, but had they pushed on her, and I know this after watching her, for several months after that, had they pushed on her, oh, but Susan, you must have an idea. Oh, but Susan, give us something. She would have held firm with her boundary of, no, this is a significant enough issue that I need to give it some thought to give you an intelligent and thoughtful answer. I need some time. She would not have caved and said riffing off the top of her head about things that could be. So she holds a boundary. And that ties to being intentional, very intentional about what she said and what she didn't say. She wasn't willing to put a half-baked idea out there because that's not who she was, and it wasn't how she wanted to lead. So they take the lead in all aspects, right? Influential people do not shy away from owning the lead. Second thing is, they're not afraid to take risks. Not, wild risks, calculated risks, but they're not afraid to take risks, which means the naysayers don't influence them. Just because someone tells you it's not possible or it can't be done doesn't mean they don't do it, right? They're careful about who influences them. And I think about all the role models who are out there, right? Tom Brady, if you happen to be a Pats fan, right? Well, he's not with the Patriots anymore, but he will always be with the Patriots in our hearts. But he's now with Tampa Bay. But what was he? In college, he was, I don't know, like 7th string quarterback. When he got to the NFL, he was a 4th and then a 3rd string quarterback. He didn't get to be the lead guy until he got to the Patriots. And he was several years into his NFL career at that point. But he didn't give up, because people said, oh, you're never going to be more than 3rd or 4th string. Oprah Winfrey, we all know this, got fired from her job as a newscaster in Chicago and still went on to create the massive empire of communications she has today. She got fired, told that she wasn't good enough to be on TV. She got fired. Arnold Schwarzenegger, you don't have to be a fan of his or not, it doesn't matter, but he was told he would never get into acting because his accent was too thick. right? These are people who didn't give up because they were naysayers and showed their resilience. In the willingness to take a risk, we have resilience. When we have resilience, we know things take time, they take practice, and sometimes they take reworking our plan. What does this have to do with influence? Because when we see people who go through the steps of going after what they want, of following their own vision, we ourselves look at that and go, wow, they're tackling that. Now I'm inspired. Now I'm motivated. Now this is somebody I want to pay attention to. And that starts moving them into a position of influence. So third quality, they're learners. Most leaders with significant influence are lifelong learners. They're always reading books. They're always looking for new ideas, new methods, new tools to do something, do it differently, do it better, or do something new. They are open-minded. They're always looking for new creative ways to approach a problem. This aspect of this open-mindedness, right, of seeking other people and ideas and collaboration, these are leaders who work with coaches, right? This is what attracts people to them because they're creative, because they're thinking, they're expanding, they have something new that they're sharing all the time. This fosters fandom and influence because you're like, what is that person thinking now? What are they going to do next? Fourth quality, they connect. They connect with Jackie said this in her comments. They build relationships, right? In connecting with other people, when you're influential and you're connecting with other people, like I said, this isn't about persuading people. This isn't about being the most charming with the quickest tongue, because really influential people know how to listen. They know how to listen. They know how to let other people have a voice. Part of what makes them influential is their willingness to give power to other people, to share the power with other people. So in their connection with other people, they listen, they let other people speak up and have their voice. They know how to add to the conversation, not subtract. So think about it as an improv skill. Improv is always what? It's always yes and. So when they're working through their conversations with people, it's not no, that's a bad idea, or no, we can't do that. It's a yes and. Let me add on to that. It's one way that they connect. Everybody is included. And the fifth quality I'm going to give you, right? So let me just go back over the four, right? The four were, checking my notes to make sure I got it. The four were they take the lead. They are not afraid to take risks. They are learners. They connect with other people. Fifth and most importantly, and you have to have this if you're going to be influential, they are connected to their purpose. They know who they are and they know what they're about. Knowing who they are and knowing what they're about is what allows them to be intentional. It's what allows them to be purposeful, to be thoughtful. It allows them to be open to other people's ideas because they already are anchored in who they are and what they're about. They have clarity on the impact that they want to make. It's their passion that makes them interesting, exciting, fun to be with. It's also what makes them a learner because they're always learning something new about that. But most important is they stay aligned to their sense of purpose. They stay aligned to their integrity, and that builds trust. When you know that someone is always going to show up in a certain way, that they are tied to their values, they're tied to their sense of who they are, you can rely on them. That builds trust. That building of trust is tied to a sense of purpose, which is tied to getting things done, which is how you leverage influence. The truth is we do not leverage people just because we have money, just because we're their boss, or we have some sort of position of power, just because we're in their orbit. We influence people because we show up true to ourselves. We show up as who we are. We show up connected to what it is we want to achieve. And it's that energy that we bring to the table that creates influence with others. So here's the thing. Influence is not an overnight trick. It's there. You can go and Google how to be persuasive, and you can read all sorts of tips about how to walk into a meeting and present your argument in a way that's going to have people like hanging on your every word. And yes, 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 they're going to follow you. But the truth is, it doesn't make you influential. That makes you persuasive in a moment. Being influential is about how you show up as a leader, as a person that has people want to follow you, because influence is something that we build over time. So, if you're thinking about being an influential leader, if you're already an influential leader, and I suspect most of you are, but want to hone in on those skills, then these are the things I want you to be thinking about, right? How connected are you to your purpose? How closely are you aligned to your integrity in your actions, in how you speak, in all of it? How well do you connect with other people? Are you learning? Are you constantly learning? How willing are you to take risks? And how often do you actually step up and take the lead? Believe in what you know. Believe in your intuition, your knowledge, and your experience, and use that to be your driving force. So that's my conversation with you guys tonight on influencers. I hope you found that useful, and on being an influencer, and I would love to talk to you more about that. Thursday night, though, is what I want to invite you to. So Thursday night, I have a masterclass. I haven't done one in a while, so I'm actually very excited that we're doing a masterclass again. And Thursday night's masterclass is going to include some conversation around being influential and being a leader. It is all about firing up your career. The focus is 5 secrets that ambitious women use to get the job, the promotion, and the recognition they deserve. So join me join me Thursday night for this free masterclass. Masterclasses run about an hour to an hour and a half, so you want to book the time for it. It's 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you would like to join the masterclass and you haven't yet registered, then drop the word, what are we putting in? Let's drop the word ambition in the chat below, and I will make sure that we get you registered for the masterclass. So that's Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We are going to be talking about being an influential leader, but we're also going to be talking about what it means to be a woman leader, because it is different being a woman leader than it is being a man leader, and it's not just about biology. And how we show up as our best possible leader, being ourselves, not becoming some kind of twisted role model of the male version of us, but actually being ourselves and stepping into our personal power and really claiming the who we are as part of our toolkit for the way that we lead. So drop the word ambition in the chat below if you have not yet signed up for the masterclass and want to join us Thursday night. I promise you it's going to be fun. I've got some worksheets I'm going to be sharing with you that we're going to talk about, that you'll be able to work through to help you master the 5 secrets that are going to fire up your career. And by firing up your career, I mean accelerate it, because that's really what we're here for. We are here to discuss the strategies, the tools, the techniques, the goals, and the mindset that help you move through your career faster, better, and with support from your coach. Thank you for joining me tonight on Training Tuesday, my friends. Always love to see you on Tuesdays, and I will see you again during the week.